passion into purpose, work begun. Co-author of a movement, not-for-profits game, teaching kids that self-belief can ease the pain. Every child deserves to face their fears with measured thinking, not just tears. She's planting seeds of...
Yay, Paulette. We're
Hello,
here.
hello.
Yes. We almost didn't make it, Paulette. Almost didn't make it.
Almost, but I'm here. Yes,
That's-
I'm drained of blood. I've been vampired, but I'm here. So
That sounds so vile. That's
that's what's
terrible.
been going on. It was as bad as it sounds, but anyway, I'm here, and I think it's a really, really good topic, and I'm looking forward to deep dive. So
Yeah.
I hope you are too, Ellie, because it's close to all of our hearts.
Yeah,
It really is.
I'm here. Like, look, let's pay homage to Mike for your new starting song, right?
Absolutely.
Well done, Mike. You've amazed me. You've amazed us. It's impressive what you've created. All I got to do now is find a way that I can play your song, in full Technicolor. So, so the starting screen only gives us 30 seconds. I'm not sure that we can extend that. I'm sure we can. But I'll find a way to play the song today.
With karaoke songs, they do it there, don't they? They must be able to find a way. Yeah, we'll find a way. I'll find a way.
No. Anyway, this news topic. You know what? The news drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I've realized the news is not the news anymore. That's a problem for them. The problem is that the news is now what the media want to pick on. They choose someone at any one time. Yesterday was Prince Andrew. I've got nothing for him, but I think they are. The news is making the news. That's the problem.
The problem is it's 24/7, 4, 6, 8, 10 channels. They're all trying to fill airtime. In whatever country, you've got 24/7 loops. So you've got people trying to create a story. So we had an incident where there was a stabbing on a train, and there were multiple stabbings actually, but it was on a train from Peterborough to it's on Doncaster, I believe, down to London. The person got on at Peterborough, and there was multiple stabbings. They were interviewing people that were on different carriages.
Yes.
Like, they couldn't get close enough, so they would just interview anyone. It was like, oh, was you passing by when the train happened to go that way? Oh, should we interview you? And it was like, what the heck's that got to do? And it's 24/7 rolling news. And the problem is that, it's bad enough hearing it once if you're a child. Hearing it multiple times, it just sounds like there was suddenly, when I was in business, I used to say to people, tell me the truth. Tell me once. Okay? So if we've got a problem, how big is the problem? Do we have 1,000 widgets or do we have 1,000,000 widgets? And they would say, oh, we've got 10,000 widgets. And I go, okay. So there are no widgets on the water on their way over from China? Yeah, there might be 20,000 widgets on the way over from wherever. Okay, fine. And there are no widgets being manufactured in China? Yeah, there may be about another 20,000 widgets in China. Okay, and have we actually paid for any of the piecemeal to make the widget up in China? Yeah, we've got all the packaging and to make another probably 15,000. Suddenly, my 10,000 widget problem is a 100,000 widget problem, right? Now that is the truth. And we go through that process of finding the truth by asking all the right people, all the right questions. But you should only have to do it once. Rolling the news 24/7 means that you try to fill gaps that aren't there. So, for example, the news used to be on, like, I can remember the 10 o'clock news, the 9 o'clock news. So if it was 9 o'clock, it used to be bed straight after the 9 o'clock news. If it was 10 o'clock when I got a bit older, straight after bed, after the news, 10 o'clock news. So the last thing we used to watch as kids was the news. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing in the world because you go to bed with your head filled with all the worst possible things you could imagine. So I'm not picking on the news per se, but it's a good example of where in business we demand accuracy and we demand clarity and we demand a clear perspective. In
I'm,
the
I'm,
news,
I'm picking on the news.
and
They're
because
the
the
biggest
news
story.
doesn't do that. The news
But,
doesn't do that anymore.
but the news
There's
is,
no
look,
clarity.
no, at all. You remember
No,
there was a time, because we pay for the BBC, right? You do, I
yeah.
do. And the whole point is that it's meant to be objective, useful news that is properly researched and what we need to know. The BBC doesn't do that anymore. They make news. They make news literally. They decide, okay, today we're going to talk about this train, the stabbing, right? And they talk about it for all, like you say, all day, 24 hours. Tomorrow morning they wake up and go, breaking news, stabbing on the train. It's like, no. I remember I told my, no, literally, I said, I was downstairs. I'm looking at Marie. I'm like, oh, there was a stabbing on the train this morning. She goes, no, it was last night. I'm like, huh? No, it was this morning. I wanted to know it was yesterday. It wasn't breaking news. Damn, there's so many other things going on, Paula, in the world. The BBC doesn't
But
know. The news doesn't
but
want
if
to
you
report any
think
of that.
about now, put yourself as a little person. How many
Mm.
stabbings have there been? How many trains have there been, right?
Only one.
Are
Only one.
you, as a little person, having heard about all these multiple stabbings on multiple trains, going to want to go down to London on a train? I don't think so, right?
No.
And
Mm.
that's what the problem is. We, without even realizing it, we are putting impressions into our
Mm.
children's minds that it give the impression that there is a stabbing every single day on a train going to London. In fact, multiple stabbings. In fact, air ambulances, and there were police and there were this and that. The children have seen this absolutely, horrendous situation escalate. If they get told we're all going down to London to see the Tower of London, I don't think anyone's going to put their hand up and say, "Yes, miss, I'd like to go on that trip." The kids will be like, "No, no, 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 don't want to go on there. Can we get coach? Any chance of it being a coach trip? Don't fancy the old train." And I can tell you, me personally, I did witness a very bad stabbing on a train, and it affected me so badly that I don't use the underground for that reason. I won't go into detail because it was that horrific. But I had to have counselling. The police insisted on it because of what happened. And they talk about PTSD and CPTSD and all this stuff. And I am sure that having heard this over and over and over and over again, if I hadn't have had the therapy and I'm not as strong as I am, that could really have affected me. So why I'm here sort of banging my drum is because little people listen. Little people, you think they've gone to bed. You think they're not listening to the argument going on downstairs, but actually they're sitting on the stairs with their ears flapping, listening to mum and dad going at it. Or they hear mum and dad's talking about finances, or Christmas is going to be really tight, or there isn't going to be a Christmas, or whatever, whatever, whatever. And right now, around the world, in many countries, there are lots and lots of issues. And I think that we have to be mindful of what children are hearing, what children are reacting to, and the impression. So, for example, Charles and I will snap. So if we're grumpy, or when I was, that time of the month, I'll admit it, I might have not been my normal, calm, gentle self. I used to become a beast, and it was only for a couple of days a month, but the beast would come out in me, and I would go and like that, and Charles would be like, "Whoa, oh, okay, end of the month, just check the date, as if he could, forget checking the premium bonds, what day the premium bonds are. You could almost set your watch by my mood. So it was like end of the month, guaranteed grumpy moo. And I would bite his head off, he'd bite my head off back. But it would be just for a couple of days and we'd be really quite grumpy with each other. And Ben once said to me, "Do you love Daddy?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do." He said, "Why do you shout at him all the time?" And I said, "Do I shout at him all the time?" "You're always shouting at him." He said, "Sometimes I feel very sorry for Daddy." And I'm like, oh, God, what kind of evil person am I, right? And I said, "When was the last time I shouted at Daddy?" He said, "Yesterday." I said, "Oh, what was I shouting over?" Um, he had left washing in the washing machine and it was wet and damp and smelly. So I said, "Oh, okay. So should he have left washing in the washing machine that was wet, damp, and smelly?" So he said, "No, but you could have just moved it." And I looked at my 8-year-old son and wanted to go, but of course, the grown up in me had to go, "Well, you're probably right. The grown up in me should probably have moved it and not said anything." But, I had to re-rinse the washing and redo whatever. The point was, I was really taken aback that my 8-year-old child had been watching this toing and froing just a couple of days a month, and he had made the decision from this argument that we'd had over the washing that really was only about 5 minutes long. And I may well have said a few words I probably wouldn't repeat on here, but the point I'm making is it lasted all of about 5 minutes, but that was enough for him to think I didn't love his dad. So I made a real conscious effort after that to, if I wanted to moan about something, really make sure I did it once Ben was gone to bed. And the key point to this story is that children listen to what you're saying, the tone you use, the words you use. I had an 8-year-old tell me that this bloke that comes around her house that her mum calls her boyfriend is a dickhead. And 8 years old she was. And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Yeah, and I don't like him." And I said, "Where did you learn that word?" She said, "Oh, that's what Nanny calls him." "Oh, okay." So I said, "So what do you think about him?" "Oh, I think he's," and she used the word again. And I said, "Right, okay. Number one, that isn't an appropriate word for you to be using. That's a very grown up word. And number two, grown ups shouldn't be using that word around you. And if you don't like him, tell mummy when it's quiet that you're not very keen on him, and that if it's okay, you'll spend some time in your bedroom if he's coming round. Go and listen to some music or watch something on your iPad. You don't have to engage with him if you don't really like him that much." So she said, "Oh, he's really this and he's really that." And the words were just unbelievable. And I was like, wow. And then she said, "And he drinks vodka." And I said, "Oh." She said, "I'll draw you a picture." And I was very big on children who don't always want to express themselves. I used to always have pen and paper there. If they wanted to, they could like draw a picture. She drew 10 green bottles. It was like bottles of and bottles and bottles of bottles. And I said, "What are all those bottles?" And she said, "Vodka." And I was like, "Oh, mummy and the person with the surname Head, um, drink bottles and bottles of vodka." "Oh, I see." "And then they shout at each other a lot." "Oh, I see. Okay." and they go in the garage and smoke some stuff called pot. And I said, oh, okay. So I said, is that what that picture's telling me? She said, yes, that's the garage, and that's mummy and daddy, and mummy, no, it wasn't mummy and daddy, mummy and the DH, in the garage smoking pot. So I said, weed, not pot, weed. So I said, do you know what weed is? So she said, no, but that's what they smoke. I said, how do you know? She said, because I've heard them talk about it. And I said, well, do you tell anybody else what we talk about? No. It's good that I've got you though, because it helps me to think things through. I said, oh, that's good. And I kept a bit of paper, and I always have a session when I'm doing children's counselling with the mum, usually parents if it's family counselling, but it was the mum. And I unfolded this piece of paper with a washing line with 10 green bottles on it, and the word vodka. She could spell vodka. She knew exactly how to spell. I wouldn't have been able to do it at 8 years old. And I said to her, if this was handed into school, your child would be being taken away from you without question. This would say to them that you are not a good parent, you're probably an alcoholic, you've got a partner who is mean and unpleasant to your daughter and that she really dislikes, and that you smoke a lot of weed. I said, all of these things are not exactly setting you up as the ideal parent. So I'm not here to preach to you about parenting skills, but if this piece of paper was to be given to a teacher or a social worker, I can assure you, you wouldn't have your daughter living with you tonight. She looked at me and she said, what they would listen to what she's saying. So I said, well, are you telling me that any of this isn't true? She said, no, my mum does call him a DH. I said, right. So does my sister. I said, right. And in front of my daughter. I said, right. So she said, I defend the DH. I said, right. So she's hearing this word multiple times. So that's got to stop. That's the first thing. The second thing is the vodka. How many bottles of vodka are you really getting through? She said, well, it's normally a couple of bottles of wine when he comes round. It's only vodka at the weekends. And I said, and how many times are you smoking this weed? So she said, well, just the occasional joint at the weekend. Doesn't everybody? And I sort of looked at her and went, no. And I said, I'm not going to do anything with this because your daughter is happy. The grandmother I knew very well. I know the grandmother very well. I said, I know your mum. I said, so I'm not going to do anything with this information. However, I am going to see your daughter on a regular basis. If I get one more drawing that's anywhere near what's gone on here, I have no option but to report it. And yes, you could go and live with the grandmother. Anyway, what's actually happened, what's transpired over the course of probably 3 to 6 months, she's now living with a grandmother. Now that's to stop the child being taken away. That's to stop the child being taken into care. But those conversations could have had her taken away by a social worker. And you were that social worker. If you'd have heard all of that, you know what I'm saying is true. You'd have had no option but a duty of care to have taken the child away, correct?
Totally agree. Of course.
Right.
Of course.
So,
Illegal activity, alcoholism, it's all bad, right? It's all
all of
bad.
it,
And
all of
the
it, right.
child's traumatized, clearly. The children are traumatized.
And swearing like a terrible, an 8-year-old that, I used to say to her if she swore, then she got a bad mark in my room. And a bad mark didn't mean she was a bad person. It just meant that she wouldn't get the end of the room. I always used to give the kids a chance to go get something out of my box of goodies. and take a drink off my shelf, because that was part of the being kind side of me helping them. I never charged for my time, but it was important that they felt like they were getting something back for their honesty, because honesty is expensive for them. It hurts them. And getting a treat is so important. So they'd go into my treat box. And sometimes if they were really, down and miserable, if they didn't smile and give me some sort of upbeat message about how they were going to try and go forward the next week, then we would talk about maybe they needed 2 treats. But those 2 treats, you were going to have to work for it. And we would play a silly little game, and they had to guess who I was. And, I'd do something silly, and then they'd laugh. And then gradually you'd bring them round. So they were leaving your room in a far better mood than when they came in. And, I'd have the word octopus on a piece of paper, and I'd start trying to do pretend tentacles and things and trying to catch them with one of my tentacles. And they'd be like, "What are you?" And I'd be like, "You have to guess." And then they'd ask for clues. And, it gradually, children, like 8-year-old children, would love that. They had loads of fun with that. And then they couldn't wait to dive in the goodie box. And the thing about this is, that is what they witnessed, that is what they heard, that is what was traumatizing them, and that goes forward into their future life. They may well be teetotal, they may well never swear, they may well never go near weed, pot, or anything else, or even smoke, because these things are in their mind as negatives and wrong. And now that she's living with the grandmother, she isn't seeing or hearing all that anyway. So that's great news. Now, there is another child, but I'm not involved with that child, and I can't contact people based on nobody else seems concerned about the child. She's performing well in school. The school are happy with her. I'm not going to get involved. But the girl that I helped, was literally living with a grandmother. So that goes back to, what are they hearing? What are they seeing? How does this affect them? What does this do to their minds? And for me, the key really is about us just trying to be a little bit more understanding of the space you're in. So just be aware that if you think the kids are asleep in bed, check. Because if they're sitting on the landing listening to you to talk about the DIVORCE, then they will be working out what DIVORCE is actually all about, right? So this is where I think we just have to learn that lesson. And I would love to hear stories and understand stories of when you overheard something that really frightened you, or you saw something, or a situation that has really unsettled you. And then we can talk about how that was handled and whether it was handled well or not. And I think that's the part of this conversation that goes forward. Do we put the news on at 9 o'clock, or do we actually say to the children, how about you go and read a book for the last hour before bed? Or if half an hour of screen time and half an hour reading, or whatever it is you do. Maybe we don't let them watch the news. Maybe we're making decisions that are helping children not be fearful of the world. So comments, Mr.
You see,
Osung, what's
our
happening?
friends are here, so I can see many comments. I'll come to that in a second. So
Yeah.
I think we'll be surprised what kids pick up and what they worry about when it comes to the news. It's Tobias is big, it's a big, and I was gonna call him ugly. I shan't call him ugly. He might kill me if I do, right? But he's a big enough lad, 16, right? Yeah. And the other day he was like, "Dad, all this work I'm gonna be doing, what's the point?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I'm not gonna get a job." I'm like, "What do you mean? All doctors get jobs. Of course they do. you are guaranteed to get a job as anyone on earth. He goes, Dad, I saw that it's 1 in 2 chance of me getting a job, or maybe being unemployed. I'm like, 1 in 2? That's tremendous. Look at marketers. Look at everyone else. So marketers, 2 in 100 might get a job in marketing. I'm saying you'll be fine. But it was panicked. It wasn't so much it was panicked. I think it's his apathy that really bothered me. Is what's the point doing it? I'm not gonna win
It's a
anything.
lot of work. What's the point?
Yeah, for nothing. I'm saying it's not for nothing. So but obviously he saw somewhere that those figures and took it as gospel. So that's what kids do, right? They hear like you were saying earlier. You hear bits of a conversation, bits of news, and even bits of research, and they go on a whole different route to what we might even expect them to do.
Yeah.
That's the
Fill
worry,
in the
right?
gaps. Yeah.
Yes, that is the worry. I've worked at the song, by the way. So it should come. It should come. Michael, we see you. Welcome. Brother Charlie, how are you doing? We're gonna say let me do the one before that. It says, I can relate as a parent that you're a parent, Paulette. Yes, Paulette's a parent of a very big kid. Very, very big kid. How's Ben now?
22.
22, yeah.
Doing his master's medicine. Yeah.
It's honesty, being honest. Now, there's a lot more there. Let me go from the top. So, Dr. Melissa Hughes. So, Melissa, we don't see you anymore. How are you doing? Seen you for a while. I haven't seen your rooms either. Is it me, or you just don't invite me anymore? I don't know.
Melissa's had a lot going on.
Okay, so it's not me. Yay! As long as it's not me ignoring me. Now, I would not dare ignore your rooms.
I was ill on Saturday morning, but I still went looking. I was like, oh, I'm not going to go on stage, but I'll go and listen. But luckily,
did you find it? Did you find it?
It wasn't there, so it was okay. I was grateful. I was grateful to Melissa for me not having to just do anything. It was horrible Saturday. Sharon, hi, darling.
How you doing, Sharon? So Alavine is here as well.
Hi.
So it's been a while. Hope life's good to you. Yes, Paulette. Hope life is good to you, Paulette.
I'm working on it.
Everyone sees me every day, so she can't be me. It's you she's talking about.
I'd like to come to more rooms and things, but it's like I go live then wait 30 seconds before starting. That's where I need to go.
I just wait many minutes before starting.
Yeah, you're known for it, sir. You're known for it.
Well, you will know we're here. We've been here how long? Before the start, just past the start time. I was
we were. You were.
I've got my personal issues
there was a few things going on.
Yeah.
But no, I really was rotten on Saturday, and I've just had literally my appointment was 2:40, and we didn't get seen till gone 3, and then they took 8 vials of blood out of me, and then we were like rushing back to get here, and it was like, I feel sick, I've got a headache, I don't feel great, but we're here.
Yeah. No, this is the only show I'm gonna do today. So my mind, what if I will postpone? I got things to do. How are you doing, Pappy Prods 34? I love people's YouTube names. When is it any creative YouTube name? I'm like any Osang.
What's the how do you write that? Any Osang.
On my games, I do that as well. And it's any Osang, right? Kobayas has names like Goopy Shoe 356.
It should be like Big NEO or something.
Yeah, apparently, but don't look at me. Don't look at me. Brother Charlie says, he's noticed a lot of social engineering. I guess that's what the news is doing, really. So.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yes.
Iron sharpens iron. Let's talk about it. Indeed. No, Brother Charlie, you're not crazy. This is it's a weird reality.
It really is. And I tell you the other thing. There's a guy who I follow and I really get on very well with, Dan Harris, and he's got a non-speaking autistic lad called Joshy, the Joshy man we call him. And I've been following him and working with him and talking with him for about 2 years. And his son is completely non-speaking, but he's just started to really try to put words together. And his dad's had a tattoo of the keyboard put on his arm, and he spells words out. So when he's trying to communicate, and he's got a talker that you can spell situations and words out on. And he, after the last it was the last mosque incident, the really bad one in Peterborough. He's actually based in Peterborough, so Joshy loves to bake. So Joshy made loads of cakes, and him and his dad took all the cakes down to the mosque, and he took his shoes off, and he knew what to do. He talked about it with him, and they walked in and they handed out all these cakes as they were leaving prayer. And I thought, what a lovely thing to do. Now, Dan sent me a message privately and said, read this lot. And he sent me probably 40 messages that were so disgusting.
Really?
I'm contacting your from the far right of Great Britain, dare I say it, saying that I'm contacting your company, your work. You shouldn't be allowed to work. You're bringing your child up to be some kind of weirdo, putting him in the front of the world when he's a disabled lad, and you're treating him like he's, some sort of thing to be waved around in public. And then abuse, and really, I mean, disgusting filth. And I read through this and I was like, well, who are these people? So I then reposted it and thought, oh gosh, here we go. And you sort of sit there and you clench your buttocks and you think, here goes, press post and see what happens, right? And I'm pleased to say that my community didn't react at all. The other day, there was a post of a guy. He'd bought loads of flowers and just was randomly giving these flowers to old ladies. And these old ladies' faces, they're like, are you sure? Do you mean it? Really, for me? Are you sure? And they'd be like, absolute, like ear to ear smiles. And they're like, young man, you sure? And they're like, yeah, these are for you. You've got a lovely smile, or something like that. It's I love the color of your coat, or something, just a little compliment. And off they walked with a real sort of like pep in their step. And you just think, isn't that a lovely way to be? Isn't that so much nicer than all that hate? And I'm struggling at the moment to understand what's going on in the world, because the far right groups are gaining momentum, and that stuff's coming into our teenagers and impressionable young men's ears, particularly young men, like the Andrew Tates of this world, and misogyny and all this sort of thing. It's all coming in their ears. And it's no different to me talking about listening to stuff sitting on the stairs when the parents are talking, as having that stuff coming into your ears whilst you're watching YouTube or whatever, or you're choosing to watch his stuff. So I just think it's no different. Don't kid yourself that you can't be easily have your impression made on you, because you can. The same as the 8-year-old can is exactly the same as the 16-year-old can. The 16-year-old and his son read something in the somewhere, 1 in 2 doctors don't get jobs. That's it. What's the point of me spending all these hours working so hard? That's what I mean about impressionable. Andrew Tate says treat women like absolute whatever, and do this and do the other, and why work in commercialized world? Screw them all, and let's all become self-employed and do whatever. Guess what, pal? You weren't earning money, but yeah, go for it. the point I'm making and always have made is we are so impressionable. And when we've got this coming in 24/7 via the television news and places on the television, whether it's coming through YouTube, whether it's coming through any of the social medias, however the information is coming to your children or to you, we are having that make an impression on us. And what we need to do is protect the little ones, because this is what it's really about. But actually, we need to protect ourselves too. Because, if I had have really believed everything I saw on the telly, there could have been 100 stabbings or 1,000 stabbings, because it was just, rolling. And one of my friends from the States phoned me and said, "You live in Huntingdon. Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine. It's like when you asked me if I know the Queen. I didn't. It's just because it's near you or because you live in a country doesn't mean that there's that close proximity to everything. But I do think that we have to be realistic. As you said yesterday, Andrew was getting a slating. I mean, it was everywhere. And whether you are for him or against him or agree with any of it at all, and I personally think it was a complete plonker, and that's a good word, plonker. You're allowed to say that.
You have to say it's not nice.
No,
It
it's not
doesn't mean it's
nice,
not a
but
compliment.
not a compliment, but it's not the word that I was using earlier. The point is, he did some really stupid things. The interview wasn't great. The fact that he actually chose some pretty poor company to hang around with. One of the things that I often say to kids is, who's your best friend? And they give me a name. What are they like? Tell me 3 really good things about your best friend. And they do. Right, tell me 3 really bad things about somebody that you're not very keen on, not a friend. And then we talk about the qualities of different people, and maybe actually that person isn't all bad. It's just they display certain tendencies or whatever. And it's the way of getting children to open their minds. Now, if you think about that, we can't ask a child to open their mind to Andrew Tate, right? We can't ask the children to open their minds to some of the music. I mean, some of the rap stuff. I mean, it's pretty damn dreadful. I mean, I remember when Victoria Wood said "bend me over backwards" on the hostess trolley was considered to be quite a thing. It was like that was a real cheeky thing to say. Benny Hill chasing women around. Things were slapstick and silly. Now it's downright awful and horrible. And we need to find a place for our kids to be safe with what they're hearing, what they're listening to, their music choices, their friend choices. And also, like, let's just say you think you've got it pretty well sussed at home. You don't know what's going on around at your child's friend's parents' house if you don't know them well enough. You meet them at the school gate doesn't mean you know them. You don't know the people, what they're like. They might be 10 green bottles of vodka and smoking weed and saying bad swear words every 5 minutes. You don't know. So it's a little bit about opening our hearts and minds, not to being critical, not to being overly harsh with people, but to be honest. That word honesty, it's really, really important that we know who our kids are socializing with, what kind of families they're socializing with, what they're hearing, what's being influenced, and ditto what we're doing. How are we influencing these children? What are we saying? What are they hearing? What are they watching? And how is that making a difference in their lives? What say you, Mr. Osung?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. So we just have to be a bit more sensitive, I think. Hmm. The news is neither here nor there. That's what I've learned, Paulette. Like I say, it's not as though, so as parents, we make comments, and we argue as if it's the biggest thing in the world. No one really cares because tomorrow is going to pass, right? And many of the things that they predict to happen that don't really happen. Let's go through some of the comments. So Emma, is that how you pronounce your name? Welcome.
Hi,
We met
Emma.
before. You're on our YouTube. Welcome. Glad you're here. Have I missed anyone? There's a few lovely people. I can't see them on here necessarily. So Charlie says, I used to be a gang member. I'm starting to tell my story. The imagination can heal our nation. So, yeah, I like that. I like that story. And again, say what people think of gangs and gang members, they're doomed forever, right? Yeah, the worst evil of all, and it can't change. But I think obviously your evidence, your proof that gang
Yeah, and
members.
I think we shouldn't always assume that you can't change. Like I said to you, that child is now still seeing her mum, but she doesn't live with her mum. So she's not seeing the stuff that she was seeing. So her life is easier. So we've done something constructive, and it didn't involve social workers, and it didn't involve her losing her child altogether and having to go through courts and the child going into foster care and all that stuff. The family worked it out, and it's a better situation. So what's Tahir saying? So he's saying, is that a discussion with societies and living approach or practical suggestions? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. And it really is important. Yeah. It really is about plan.
There's more. Coach K, how are you doing? I have sent the link to join us if you want to come and comment and share some of your thoughts, experiences, or questions, or strategies. Is on the event page. Coach K, I'm sure I've sent you the link to your DM somewhere, either on LinkedIn or on your WhatsApp. I'm saying that Tahid. I appreciate Paulette. Brilliant. I'm glad you're saying it, right? Right. So especially I appreciate how you link simple creative activities to deeper emotional well-being. These tools empower not just children but adults around them, foster safer, more open spaces. Yes, Paulette, that's you, Paulette.
100%.
And thank you for sharing your expertise and elevating this vital conversation.
Thank you. It really is important work. And it's not done just because I like the sound of my voice. A little nugget here, a little nugget there will resonate. And the next time you're about to fly, or you're aware that your child's in the room and there's something on the television that's probably not appropriate, you'll just, I'm not doing that. We're changing that because, and when you have these open conversations with your partner, I'm very sarcastic. I've got a really wicked, as Annie will tell you, wicked, evil sense of humor. And Charles, my husband, is exactly the same. So the banter is all day long. Doesn't mean we don't love each other dearly, but we actually just give each other grief all day long. But it's not done with menace, it's done with fun. And if you didn't know us, maybe that would give a different impression. You've been in the house with us. You've seen how we constantly
the most loving couple there ever has been. That's what I say.
But we are at each other the whole time, joking, but going at each other all the time, and there's a parcel delivery, and the guy who delivered the parcels, he's very hairy. Now that doesn't mean he's a bad person. He's just got a lot of hair, and he's got a facial beard, and there's a lot of hair. So every parcel that comes to our house has Pete on it. Now, we called him Hairy Pete because Hairy Pete delivers the parcels. And that was fine. Hairy Pete delivers the parcels. Anyway, turns out that's not his name at all. It's Pete for Peterborough, which is the local sorting office.
Mm.
I can't look at that man and think of anything but Hairy Pete. And I was going to write a Christmas card and put some money in an envelope. And I wrote to Hairy Pete. I had to screw the card up, and it was a special one with a letterbox on it, and to my postie. And I
You screwed it up.
I
You
screwed it
should,
up
you should have given it. You should
completely.
have given it to him. Why
No
don't you
way.
give it to him?
No way.
He's Harry
But
Pete.
there's an example of
Mm.
where, the humorous name that you gave somebody, that wasn't hurtful, wasn't spiteful, wasn't mean, just
Mm.
turned out that his name is not Harry P at all. It's his
You
name
see,
is,
you
I
see,
think
you
it's
see, but Paulette, here's maybe this is a different side of the issue. Some people do mean things. You know,
absolutely.
I think they should learn not to express their meanness in front of their kids, for
Yes.
example.
Or
You know,
or their view if it's political, or their view if it's
mm,
racist,
mm,
homophobic, and all those
exactly.
kinds of things.
Mm,
Absolutely. Um, I have a very large circular. Now we in the UK we call them poofs. Um, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that word.
it's a
Okay, that's
footrest thing. It's a
it's a
footrest thing, right?
footrest, but what do we
Yeah.
call them in the UK? The
They're
title we used to
poofs.
call them, we're called poofs. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, I happened to say in one of these rooms, we were on live, and the dog had jumped down, and I said to Charles, "Can you give the puff? Could you give the puffer? Could you give the puffy a push for me?
Yeah, no,
Right?
fluffy,
Could you
give him
could
the
you
fluff,
give
yeah,
the puffy a push for me? Right?
yeah.
The puffy is the round poof, and it keeps my
Mm.
feet nice and it helps my back. So it was never meant to be insulting in any way, shape, or form. And I got a comment from somebody who was offended, and I
Yeah.
had to say to Annie, "I've offended somebody. I didn't mean to. How do I deal with it? What do I say?" And I was completely open and honest and said, "Look, here's the description in the UK. That's what we've got in the dictionary. It doesn't mean anything other than the thing you put your feet on, and I apologize. Was never meant to cause offense." And that really is the truth. But that isn't a mean thing, but it got interpreted as a mean thing. But
Mm.
there are people who just are mean. They just
Yes.
say things that are horrible, and kids pick up on those, and
Mm.
unfortunately, they repeat them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll give just another example, because all these things will make you think. So a little girl comes to see me, and she's got into a lot of trouble at school. And you may have heard this story before, but anyway, the story is she's got into a lot of trouble at school. And the reason she's got in trouble at school is because she told a little girl who was being mean and naughty and bullying that what she was doing was mean and naughty and bullying, and God would come to her house and would set it alight, strike it with lightning, and everybody would burn to death because of what she'd said. That little girl goes home and tells her mum that this little girl Gracie has told her mum, has told her that this is what's going to happen. So the next day, that mother is up at school screaming and shouting about this horrible child, who said all these awful things because the kid had a nightmare and was scared and blah, 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 blah. Now, did the child get hold off for being a bully? Did the child get off for doing bad things? No. What happened was the child that had told her that a house would burn down got into trouble. Now, there's two things here. Number one, I said to Gracie when I was asked to talk to her that the first thing that I felt was that it's not her place to manage the playground. That's what teachers or playground duty staff are for. If you have a problem, you go and tell the teacher, but it's not your place to handle it. So that's the first thing, the way I dealt with it. The second thing was, where did you hear about these things that God does? And she said, that's what my dad says. My dad says to us that if we do bad things, God will be angry, and God will do bad things to the family, the house, and my brothers and my sister. And I said, really? Wow, okay. So here's the thing. I said, do you believe in God? Oh, yes, 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 yes. She said, do I believe in God? And very open, honest question. So I said, yes, I do. So I said, well, I believe in something. I don't necessarily believe in your God or my God, I believe in the universe and God and Mother Nature and all sorts of things. But I guess I would say yes, I believe in God. So she said to me, well, if you do something naughty, do you not worry that God won't come and strike your house down? So I said, no, I don't, because I think he's got a lot to do. He's rather busy. And I don't think he's actually watching everything that we're doing. I know that's what we're told, but actually it's down to us to manage us. God just says, these are the rules. Be kind, be nice. You don't need to be mean to each other. And that's what he's asking of us. He's not asking us to police the playground. And he's certainly not asking of us to go out and tell other children that their house is going to get burnt down. That's not your job. And at that point, she looked at me and she said, so does God not watch everything I do then? So I said, well, what does your dad tell you? Well, my dad says that he's watching everything. That's why we have to behave. So I said, well, how about we have to behave because we should? How about we have to behave and be nice to people because we should? And she sort of looked at me and she said, well, I suppose. So I said, but where does this house being burnt down come from? Well, God strikes your house with lightning. I said, have you ever done anything really naughty? She said, yes, a few times. And I said, and has your brothers and sisters done anything really naughty? Yes, a few times. And what happens? And she told me that they get into a lot of trouble and dad goes mad at them. And da, 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 da. I said, did the house ever burn down? No. Did God ever strike it with lightning? No. So were they quite bad things you did? Well, dad thought so. I said, well, dad obviously thought so, but your house was safe. Yes. So therefore, you don't have to think that every time you do something wrong or naughty, that there's a chance your house is going to burn down and your brothers and sisters are going to be inside. And I'm telling you that if you say that to any other children's school, you're going to be back in here every week. She looked at me and she said, so just be good because you should. I said, well, that seems like a good reason, doesn't it? And she went, well, I suppose. So I said, do you think you could try it? So she said, yeah, I could try it. And she left. I never saw her again. Didn't need to. She turned it around. She realized that actually just being a nice person that's all that's required. But using God as a stick to beat a child up is a terrible thing to do. But then using God to then the child to use God to beat another child up is exactly what we're talking about. Replicating behavior. Children will do say what they're told. And that's exactly what she did. She didn't do anything other than what she'd been told. She was telling it her truth. Her truth was that that's what she'd been told, that's what she expected. So that was her truth. And I think that's where we need to get to in life. be very mindful of what our truth is. When we talk about being honest, you can be the most biblical person on this planet, the most holiest person on this planet. But I don't think telling children that the house is going to burn down with all their family in it if they steal the cupcakes is really necessary, the right decision. And I'm not telling parents how to parent, I'm only advising that the consequences of parenting that way are that they will go into school and they will replicate that behavior. And that's what you end up with, a playground with a child being told that their house is going to burn down and God is going to hit them with lightning. Am I wrong to say that? I don't think so. Am I going against the word of God or whatever? No, I'm just saying don't use God as a stick.
But
Am I right?
people who have strong beliefs. This goes back to the same thing with the news, where what did I say? Opinions are like, yes, everyone's got one, and they feel, people can feel strongly about what they believe. So religion, I think you're on dodgy ground there, my friend. Seriously, people are going to come for you on that one. How dare you say, God
No,
doesn't punish you? If that's what they believe.
no. Yeah, but listen, I don't think there's a problem in saying that God will punish you if you do something wrong. But if you're a child and you took a cupcake, the house is not going to burn down, and your brothers and sisters are not going to burn to death because of your behavior. And I am saying, let the crime, let the time fit the crime.
Yeah,
If you
let the
want to use
consequence be
exactly, but you
reasonable.
don't have to be so harsh that that
Mm,
child is traumatized, but
mm.
then takes that trauma and just passes it on
Yeah,
to
to
someone
other
else.
kids. Yeah,
Exactly. So it's
but
about,
again,
by all means come for me, but I'm not saying that God, you know, trying to say to a child that God is watching your every action is pretty terrifying for a child. I mean,
yeah,
when Ben went through a very um, keen religious stage, and he asked me, "Does God watch me having a wee?" And I was like, "Well, why would God watch you having a wee, Ben?" And he said, "Well, I tried to do it discreetly." And I was like, "Why?" Because I don't want God to watch me. And I said, "Well, why are you saying this?" He said, "Well, God watches everything we do." And I said, "Well, yes, but he's a bit busy to sit watching you having a wee. Do you not think there's all the millions of people in the world? He's a bit busy." And he looked at me and he went, "Oh, yeah, I suppose." And you just have to make it so that you're not diminishing the belief, you're not
mm,
diminishing their desire to believe in what they believe. What you're doing is trying to make it fit into the world that we all live in.
mm,
Putting it into perspective so a child can digest it, understand it, and then go, okay, so I can have a wee and not worry that he's not watching. Absolutely. I would far rather you weed in the hole than weed up the wall because you're trying to do it discreetly. Do you understand? Um,
hello.
as much as we're
That's a lot.
laughing and I'm making a joke of it, I'm being deadly serious. If you keep on with saying those things repeatedly, this is what they're hearing at their school, then that goes, if you're an intelligent child and you're a thinking child, and Ben certainly was a very deep thinker, he's sitting there trying to have a wee with his back to the door so that, God can't watch. It's quite important to think that, Ben's ever watching the back, he'll kill me. But the point I'm the point I'm making is I'm not making the stuff up. This is
Mm,
real. This is the truth. And I don't want children to be that fearful that, you know, they shouldn't be able to have a wee and not worry that God's watching, right? And
And,
and and that's just a very small aspect of what we're talking about as a story, as a
mm,
conversation today. The
mm,
conversation is about, does that child want to get on a train when it has heard repeatedly over and over again that people get stabbed on trains? Does a child want to go to
it's not.
London if they've heard that someone's been shot in London? There might have been one person shot in London, one person
Mm,
stabbed in London, but that's heard over and over again. It now sounds like there's 1,000 or 1,000,000 because you've heard
Miss,
it so many times.
Miss Banana's here to come and chat with you.
Oh, my
Welcome,
beautiful
Alana.
Alana. Hello, darling.
Good morning. Boker
Hi,
tov.
sweetie.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Todo el mundo. Wait,
I don't
you're
know that
gonna
one.
laugh. Well, wait, you're in the show. Oh, everyone can see.
We can
So
see you. Be clean.
oh, well, since I'm not clenching my buttocks, I found that I have to. And because you're coming out as like double strips. And even myself, I'm sorry, guys down below or wherever, we're all on the same we're all on the same wavelength and level. Just on my on my screen, it's like 12 people, and
Well,
it's
now
only
we're doing hand
that's
signals that
irrelevant.
don't mean anything.
Oh,
Has
and I
anything
have
I've said, you look beautiful. Has
no, I'm
anything
way
I've said resonated?
beyond. Like, so I'm just gonna oh, and I'm okay. So I'm just gonna spit this out just because it's my identity and Paulette, and it's never out of it's always out of like care and understanding and compassion. And so I am half Israeli Jewish and also half Iraqi. And I come from New York City, from the fashion world, as well as having a PhD as a speech and language pathologist with handicapped children. And I also volunteer in many situations in many different organizations where I feel like I need to. And as Paulette and Annie have been part of this at times, the things that you give the best of yourself are the things that you don't discuss with other people because you don't need anybody's credit, but you know that you're doing it internally. So it's not to like raise yourself up. So with everything that's going on in the world, and Paulette knows this in particular, I'm here in Florida because I have an ill parent, and I've been going back and forth to New York. And today's a huge election in New York, and it's a big deal because I'm concerned about New York remaining New York. And it's ironic because, and this is totally not going Paulette any like I, I don't I watch the news maybe for an hour a day, usually to kind of get the input of the weather because I'm Florida. I'm still dressing in leather attire because it's fall and it'll be like 97 degrees outside. But I really research facts and I look into also overseas media. Like, we don't have, what is it in England? The one that is horrible, the BBC. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of information that does not come in from like a bipartisan mindset. So, going away from all of that, I've been asked frequently, since I am loud and proud for humans in New York. I say humans versus people who incite violence. Anyone, no matter what your religion, it's a melting pot in New York. We're all squished in there, but I have closest friends from Muslim and Hispanic and Latino and Black and from India and everything. And like we say mashpacha, which is an Israeli word, which means family. So we really are all family. And the scariest thing for us right now, we don't want people who are pro hate or pro inciting violence to take over a city that's been in the world of diversity. Like, the Big Apple truly is the Big Apple because it's been the land of diversity. So I would just really, I'm praying for that to remain because everything I have learned as a child, where you respect others, no matter what they have, what they don't have, skin color, just if we all bleed red, we all bleed red. So that's my bottom line. And I'm just going to give a little sample of, like, Paulette, something you said. So for all of, I think it's been 2 years now. It's been 2 years since I've met any of Paul. And actually, I had to be friends with Paulette because she said something really inappropriate and really funny on another meeting. And when someone gets me hysterical laughing, especially because Annie knows this, when I would run in my heels, like, because I have a high arch from being in New York, run in my heels to meeting. And I finally get on this very crowded meeting, and Paulette is using a very like different way of using verbiage from the US to Brit. So it became hysterical to me. Like as if you're puffing out your hair. We'll just use that as an example of the word. If she wants to reveal, she can. But I happened to be in a store yesterday here in Florida while I'm waiting to go back to New York, hopefully, because I'm scared to go back to New York if one side, I'm scared to go back if it can't be the diverse people who I know, feeling safe. So I was in a store here yesterday and walking. I have a service dog, Dude, and a little girl was with her father, or rather her uncle, and she saw in the window and she said, "Ooh, Uncle John, that looks amazing." It's a grown up, like, fancy store. So he said, "Do you think you'd like that on?" So then he turned to her and he said, "I don't think they'll let you try it on." Now, my dog works with handicapped, and he's a pediatric oncology dog, a service dog that goes into hospitals. So immediately I said to her, "Come on." Like, I wasn't trying to be flirty with him or anything, but everyone, a child, anyone should feel safe and comfortable and not judged to just go in and try something on. And I'm the first one to grab someone and say, just go do it. If it makes you feel happy and you're not causing any injury, go. So I said to him, "I'm so sorry if I'm invading, but your niece," I won't give her name now, "your niece absolutely loves my dog, and my dog works with kids. So let her go in and try it on." So I went into the store with her, and the woman said, "Are the three of you together?" And I said, "No, but I actually am this little girl's personal shopper. So she goes with her dog." So I told a little fib, but I have to say, we had the best time. And then I said, "Okay, that hat," which happened to be this adorable hat, and she loves cats. The little girl loves cats. And she gave me her name, and the uncle gave me information. Lovely. But the point is that she loved this hat. She wasn't asking her uncle to watch her with it on, but she was asking me and Dude. Dude is the dog. And I said, "I love it. I love it." And then I looked at the price tag and I said, "You know what? I think for my own self, I need to do a pay it forward today, just because I'm a little nervous. And sometimes in the world, things are hard. So I think it would make me feel better to do a pay it forward to you." And I'm just saying this on here, and then it goes nowhere. So the uncle looked at me and he said, "No, no, no. I'm very successful in LA. So we don't need to pay it forward." I said, "No, no. We look at pay it forward from a different view. So let me just do this. And then I'm just going to explain it to her. And you tell me, Sir John, if I got it correct." So I got her the hat that actually looks like eyes, nose, and then on the brim, it's yellow. They're like little whiskers. So she loves cats. So I said, "So I want you to know," let's just call her C, because now I know her name. So, C, this is what I call it: tag team. I said, "It's not just for people," because the uncle made it seem like it was for things for people who couldn't afford other things. And bottom line is, a pay it forward can go for anyone, whether it's someone who's crying on the corner because they don't have something and you want to get them coffee and tea, or, like we've discussed, just to be we call it a mensch, like a good soul. But I wanted to make myself feel better and to watch her smile and laugh. That was the payback for me. But when I was explaining to her, I said, all you have to do now, see, you don't have to buy anything for anyone. If it's not your money, if you're not with a parent, just don't do this on your own. Do it with a parent. But if you see a kid at school and they're alone and it's a first day, your job now is to say, "Hi, my name is C. I hope you like the school." I said, all you have to do, I said, "I'm tagging you with the hat. This is your tag. Now, all you have to do is just give someone a nice smile or walk by and give a giggle. but it's your way of saying, I see you. I see you. I said, and just know that never hurts anybody. Just to let them know that you see them. So as I'm listening to you talk, Paulette, and I know that like kids who don't have the verbal abilities, and you mentioned like the augmentative board, because that's with the pictures and the touch, like that's brilliant teaching. Before that, the augmentative boards and PECs and all of that came out. So the mixture of working as a model in fashion and then also working with delayed and disabled kids, people are shocked that I can go from one side to the other. But in explaining how it worked, even to the uncle, he's like, I never realized the pay it forward was not just for poor. And I said, no, pay it forward is for anyone. Like in me doing this for your sake, just seeing her excitement and her happiness right now for me, with everything going on in the world, like that makes me happy. And Paula, you know, like with everything that's going on, especially with the all different sides fighting and family all over the place, I worry. So, and my biggest wish, but not just for me, for many people, is to be able to go back to New York City and feel like we could live again with all diversity and all quirkiness and all in heels running or sneakers or just all being together, laughing like we always have, and no one ever inciting violence on just to be cruel. Just I get the key thing is like you said, be kind, be aware. And the other thing that I love is that when the other child mentioned about God, like, do you think God will see that? So my mindset, and actually, I hope people can laugh about this. I had something really bad happen to me like 6 years, 5 years ago. And every night I do say my own form of prayers. Like it's not like in Mary Poppins, even though Paulette's my Mary Poppins, but like I say my own prayers, like for sick people, or I say my own prayers. So I went to a rabbi and I said, I have to leave two people out of my prayers because I was hurt so terribly at one point. Is that okay? So the rabbi said, you know what? You say what you need to say because we said God or Hashem or whatever is above, that's a holier power. He knows what has happened. So that's the miracle about and whatever's above us, that he knows what you've been through and understands. Now me, because I also need to be validated, especially with accuracy and accountability, I also went to the church, St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan, which is a huge church, and they're so lovely. And one of the preachers there is like great. So I went to him with the same question, and he said it in a different way, but he said exactly the same thing. And then I said to him, so do I need to do penance? Am I supposed to do penance? And he said, well, no, because you're Jewish, but you could still volunteer and do what you're doing already. He's like, but, and then I told him afterwards, I said, you know what? So I got it from a rabbi and I got it from a priest. So I feel like then I'm validated for leaving two people out because, and not my parents who I adore, but two people who would really, I felt like, don't deserve my prayers anymore. But I think God knows, or whatever above, the greater force knows when someone has been through something and and you're forgiven for that. Like so I do believe that God or Hashem or whatever is above knows all and sees all. Because that's
Yeah.
just my thought press. Yes. But I will always remember
that is a I think that as a premise is fabulous and lovely and isn't detrimental to a child like Ben because being very literal, worrying about God watching him have a wee. So when you've got a very literal child, they will take things to the nth. Um, the other child that took it to the nth was because she was being told by her father the really bad stuff was going to happen. So I think that, having any say, oh, people will come for you. People won't come for me because they understand what I'm saying is that absolutely you can have faith. Absolutely you have your beliefs. And absolutely what goes on in your home goes on in your home and you tell it how you tell it. But understand if you are using God as a stick, your child will now use God as a stick on someone else. Because you talk about paying it forward. That's all paying it forward is in that respect. Without realizing it, you're teaching a child to do something that you do. It's just repeated behavior and it gets into a loop. So, what I always try to do is teach kindness, teach, always teach that everybody is equal. I always believe that um, even if you've done something wrong, if you own up to it, you explain what you've done, you explain the reasons you've done it, depending what it is. I mean, if we're talking about something heinous, very different. But if we're talking about you stole a packet of crisps and you shouldn't have done, then you know the crime is you stole, and we have to understand that stealing is really bad. And if we don't understand that when we stole a bag of crisps, then the gold ring is only a matter of steps away. So what we have to understand is that stealing is wrong. So we teach that stealing is wrong without using God as the stick. And so for me, it's about everybody, and I mean everybody, whatever religion, whatever faith, whatever. If we can't be civil, kind, and respectful, then there's going to be a problem. And as soon as we lose that kindness, respectfulness, and the ability to see the other person's point of view, even if it conflicts with you, you have to be willing to listen. And I'm afraid that what is happening is that it's he who shouts the loudest is winning. And that isn't the way it works. And I'm struggling with a few things with um, kids that I'm looking after, um, where they are really listening to this Andrew Tate and this misogyny, and women are almost have no value. We are here for sex, produce kids, and to keep the house clean. And one of the conversations that I've had with a 14-year-old boy was, do you actually one day want to get married? Yes. Do you want to have lots of sex with lots of different girls? Yes. Okay.
At 14.
At 14. So I said, you know the girl that you want to marry? My ears are just gone. You know the girl that you want to marry? So he said yes. I said, is she going to be one of the girls that you have lots of sex with lots of different people? No. So I said, so what about all those other girls then? Well, they won't be virgins, will they? No. So what are we gonna do with them then? And he said to me, well, they shouldn't have done it. So I said, but you wanted them to do it. And he said, yes, but they don't want to do it. They don't have to. And I said, well, here we go. This is what misogyny is all about. And then I sat him down and we had a little lesson on what misogyny is all about. And I asked him if he felt that his mother was the same level as his dad, higher or lower. And he said, no, the same. And I said, okay, and where am I? If we now go, mum, dad, me, where am I? And he said, oh, you're here. And he put me above. And I said, why am I here? He said, because you know more than them. I said, I don't know more than them. I said, I just am able to get you to understand differently. And the point of the conversation was that misogyny and those beliefs of it's okay to sleep around and but you want to have the virgin bride and you want this, that, and the other. well, you know what, you can't have it all, pal. And when you explain that, it kind of throws everything that he thought out the window. And he sat there and he said to me, are you going to go on the television and on YouTube and make films like Andrew Tate does then? And I said, well, why should I? And you know what he said? He said, I think you should. And I said, why should I? And he said, because then there'd be a better argument as to why we shouldn't follow that. And I looked at him and I was like, you get to get 2 treats out my box because you had just hit the jackpot. Come here. And we did high fives, 2 treats and gone. The point is, we can teach differently, but we have to do it in a way that they understand. And it is not reinforced at home. If you've got negative behavior, if you've got racism, if you've got anti anything at home, you're going to take that forward into your school, into your life. And we have to stop it at root cause. We need to stop it in the house. We need to stop it in the home. We need to stop it on the streets. We need to stop it, full stop. And when we stop it, we all have a better life. Alana gets to go back to New York and have her normal world, which would be amazing.
My dream world of diversity.
A world of diversity without argument, without fighting, without everybody needing to be in charge of anybody else.
Well, there's
Everybody
arguing, fighting, but it's with sarcasm and hysteria.
sarcasm's great. So
You know,
I'm an expert at that.
That's my language. Like, that's my language. They say New Yorkers are tough.
I said to Charles that was our love language, and somebody burst out laughing and said sarcasm. I was like, yeah, I think so.
I love it.
We don't give each other gifts. We give each other grief.
Can I add one more thing?
It's done with love and fun. Always love and fun, you know. And that's the key here. The conversation we're trying to put into people's minds today is to just think about what you say, who's listening to it, what effects it can have, and what ongoing chain reaction it will have going down the line. Like Alana's act of kindness is just that. It was an act of kindness that made Alana feel good doing it, but also the little girl goes away with a smile on her face, and now she'll do something in her own way. She'll do her own act of kindness. And it might be a smile, it might be taught to a child that's looking lonely or lost, or it might be whatever. But it's a lesson that Alana taught. And I think that is something that is so important, that if we as not just as parents, not just as teachers, not just as therapists, counselors, whatever, we as humans, let's take everything away, strip it back. We as human beings, if we are going to continue to evolve and to grow and to develop and to live in harmony, we need to all do what we're saying, which is to stop the negative talk and start to listen and start to integrate and try to see the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it. But
be an individual. That's what I love. Be an individual. Don't be a follower. Don't be someone who
absolutely.
That's what I love, Paulette. Like, think for yourself. And actually, as babies are proven to be born with smiles, to be born with cooing, to be born with happy sounds. So as parents, we're the ones who have to mold them in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we let them go off. And you know, this is when I say I've done my job correctly, when I see my boys being so respectful to people who are very different from themselves, but they're not different.
I will tell you, Ben was first week in the laboratories this week. So it's last week. It was his first week in the labs. and he was meeting 2 professors he'd be working with on his masters, and he was very nervous. We all expect to be nervous when meeting the bosses, and he said to me, "Can you think of anything I could do to make it easier?" So I said, "Well, I think that pastries always go down well." So he just laughed at me, and I thought, well, maybe he'll listen, maybe he won't. He took some pastries in, a couple of bags of pastries, and it was just an icebreaker. Oh, I bought breakfast. And the guy said, well, we'll have to have it in the office because we don't take food into the labs. He said, did you complete your lab training and everything? And he said, yes. He said, then we have to go and have a coffee first. So Ben was like, kind of hoped you'd say that. And then they had a cup of tea, they had a little chat, very informal 10 minutes. Then they went and had a very formal 5 or 6 hours. But that broke the ice and made it easier for him. Manuel is from, he told me, gosh. Hold
This is
on.
the professor is Manuel.
Yeah, one of the professors. I think it might be Buenos Aires he was coming from. And then Dr. Chris, or Mr. Chris, is from somewhere else, one of the professors. But what he was telling me, by the end of the week, Friday, he phoned up 3:00, and we were like, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be in the labs? And he was like, well, I've worked so hard all week. They let me finish early for my first week of work, proper job. And it was like, great. You got a couple of hours off because you've shown willing and you've worked hard. Now, that is when I can sit back and go, yeah, we did a good job, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
And
I don't want praise for it, and I don't want to take anything away from Ben. Ben's done this.
Right.
But I am really grateful that it's turned out that way for him, because this is his second week and he feels differently. Now, this is a 22-year-old child, and we're talking about children's anxieties. He had the same anxieties as a child would have going to start a new school, having a new class, a new teacher, moving house. All of those anxieties, all of those fears that I write about in my books are exactly what Ben had as a grown-up starting a new job. Alana's having those same fears about what's going on in her beautiful home of New York. And so we all have the right to feel uneasy. We all have the right to feel scared and fearful. And what we're trying to do is make that as least fearful, but with the best possible outcome. And the way we do that is by keep teaching, by being supportive and helping our children to grow, and
keep
to
smiling.
follow our lead and keep smiling, following
and
our
keep
lead,
dancing
and smiling. Do what Alana does, dance and in heels like this. I'm flats these days, but there's somebody's in heels. We better let Olivine have a quick 5 minutes before we cut off.
And then
Are you able to do that?
I love you so very much. I'm so glad that you're feeling better. It's been a back and forth, so I'm so glad that you're feeling better.
Yeah.
And I've missed talking to you as well. You're not on my thing anymore, but
Annie, where are you?
She finds a bag that she likes. Can you drop me down, or do I drop myself down?
I think Annie drops you down. There we
Annie,
go.
drop me.
I can remove you from the stage if you would like.
Yeah.
She would like to go down again, but she says, thank you very much. You're lovely.
Can't blame me. Let's welcome Dr. Lee. How are you doing, Lisa?
Lisa.
You took your time. Welcome. Glad you're here, though. Jay, we see you too, my friend. Outside providing safe spaces. And many Americans are worried about how food impacts children and their behavior. England is better regulating. We're not really. You think we are?
We're trying.
Yeah. Well, if you ask the news, if you watch the news, you think we're not. You think we're terrible. all the kids are
Yeah,
starving.
40% obesity in children under 10.
At the same time, food poverty is, is higher than it's ever been. It's not. Neither is true, by the way. Obesity may be. I just don't know what's going on, right? Should American parents be cautious about food and behavior? How food impacts children and behavior?
Listen, there was a drink called gosh, it was I can't remember. It was orange juice.
Orangini.
Sunny Delight.
Oh, that one. Full of
And my
sugar.
nieces were drinking this Sunny Delight, and I'd never seen like it. They were like maniacs. They were shooting around the room, and they behaved over the back of the sofas, and I was like, I agreed to look after them because they're little angels. What's going on? And she said, "Can I have another drink?" I said, "Yeah, I'll get you a drink. What are you drinking?" So JD says, "We like this Sunny Delight." I'm like, "Well, we'll have a look at it then." And I read it. I said, "Have you had one?" "We've had 3." I was like, "Right, well, they're going up on the top shelf." And that was it. And so absolutely, what is in food, what is in the drinks, all of those E numbers and sugar, it's been proven, the scientists have proven that it absolutely has an effect. And yeah, we should be cautious. And when we're eating cheese, is it really cheese or is it manufactured stuff that looks like cheese? I mean, you watch the television programs, you're like horrified, I've always thought that the cheese in a cheeseburger is like the weirdest cheese, but the greatest cheese because it's all melty and gooey and it's great. And then I watched this program and it's got I think it's as far away removed from thing called cheese as it could be, but it tastes great and it looks great. But is it cheese? I don't
No,
know.
it's not real cheese, Paulette. That
No,
orange stuff is not real cheese.
no,
We know.
it's plastic.
Yes. And I eat loads of it, by the way. So at home, I tend to like that gooey stuff. I had potatoes last night. I had
But
2
that's
bits
what
of.
we're talking about. This stuff is in every single, whether we're talking GM crops or whatever, we have to be mindful at the moment that there is going to be a major food issue. I mean, thankfully, it sounds like the government are putting out food stamps for people that really need it. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the US with all of that. But I know that there are people who are very worried about their food and what they're going to do to feed their kids. And this is something, these are worries that children hear you talking about, and if the cupboards and the fridge is empty, they will notice and they will worry. So you can't magic the food, but it is something to remember and think about, I mean, I can remember being so cheeky, going next door and asking my neighbor if they had any bread. And they said yes. And then I said, "Do you have any butter?" And they said yes. I said, "Do you have any ham?" And they said yes. And I was only about 11 or 12 and I was hungry. And I said, "Could you make me a ham sandwich, please?" And the woman was so damn shocked that I was at the door asking for a sandwich. She made me one. And then my mum, I got 6 bells knocked out of me because I'd gone around this door begging for food. But I was hungry. I was a hungry child. I hadn't had any, whatever it was, any lunch or whatever. And I'd gone out to play and hadn't come home when food was available and missed out. So I went to my neighbour and asked them if they made me a sandwich. Yes, nowadays you'd laugh and think that's very strange and odd, but that's what I did. Right, what does Oluwasi say? Olu says the challenge with not having a corridor moral and a spiritual system that most, not all.
That's right too. Is that then the possibility of having very widely divergent understanding of what is right and what is wrong? It's as many as a different understanding and coded system that we each ascribe to. It's very complicated indeed. God help us all. Amen. And women.
It's Olu's right, though. I mean, it is a very complicated system of what's right and what's wrong. But to be honest with you, the rule book, as I call it, if you take the Bible as a rule book as well, not only is it the book of God, it's also a book of coded morals and spiritual system, and it is a book of right and wrong, and it is a book of this is acceptable, that isn't, you know. And if you were to live by the Bible, then you know what, that would make life very easy if everybody had the same Bible. What happens is that everybody has tweaked the Bible in their own sweet way. That means that everybody's spiritual coded moral system is different, and that is a big issue. And that is when we have the complaints and arguments and wars and God knows what else about. It's not just about spiritual systems. Most of the time it's about oil and land and things, terrible things like that. But you know, the most important things are that people need to understand that if you don't treat people the way that they deserve to be treated, there will be repercussions. If you do something that's wrong, expect a repercussion. And nobody should be surprised by that. You know, that is completely normal. And, you know, when Annie says, God help us all, you know, I absolutely agree. You know, it's the most important thing is if we leave this room a little bit wiser, a little bit more careful about what we say, how we say it, the terminology we use, the pressure that we use with words. You know, if you use a certain tone, it can sound very bad when maybe it wasn't intended, but that tone can change a whole conversation. A very quick example, I was in a meeting with Annie, there was lots of people in the room. Somebody called me a goat. I was really offended. Everybody was laughing at me. I was even more offended they were laughing at me. And then
Well,
Annie
that's
said to
with
me,
you.
it's we're laughing because it's so funny to see you react this way. And I was like, but it's not funny to call someone names. And you said, no, the goat is the greatest of all time. It's a compliment. And I was like, oh. And then I felt really silly for having on, did you call me a goat? I was all like on my high horse, you know. It's about understanding. It's a different language. I'd never come across that that before. Never. So there you go, you see, that's being old.
They say,
Right,
welcome.
we've got somebody on the oops, hang on, we've got a message. Hang on.
Welcome, Madam Biron K. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So,
Welcome.
can we teach values as they impact the next person? Kindness, you know, Madam Biron talks parenting. So, welcome,
We
welcome,
don't
welcome.
need a sword or a dagger. We don't.
Mm.
Absolutely, we don't. No. All we need to do is reason
There's,
and love.
there's many more. There's many more comments. Let's hear from Alavine, and then
Yes.
okay, Dr. Roxana is here as well. Then I can play your song again in full.
All
this
right,
time.
let's listen, and then we'll play the song, and then we'll call it a day because it's gone on,
Yes,
hasn't it?
exactly. Alavine, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for every tips I received. You know, as the old, let's say, worker. So let's say I worked at kindergartens before. I worked as an assistant with professor with children before, and I can say that it is true. However, we need to see how we can help children when they spend more times with strangers than with their family members. Because we say as the parents we need to do this, we need to do that, but we don't speak, we don't see let's say, the danger of letting them all along the day at kindergartens with others, because children, they learned from what they see and not from what you tell them. Even if, yes, you can tell them you need to be polite, you need to be kind, but if you don't s- so if you don't give the example, if you are not the example by doing, they will copy your doing, not your words. And I was thinking of that because I saw a lot of things when I was working at kindergartens, at schools, how parents treat their children, thinking that they don't know, how parents left their children without taking times before talking with them, reassuring them, telling them, yes, mommy needs to go now, but she will come back tonight. And how some of my colleagues, they had the tendency to check if the parents had really left, and after, right away, they take the child and tell him, oh, you are here, you have to play with others. They didn't take times to reassure this children, this child, to to make this child feel comfortable and safe here. So I mean, in the kindergarten for the day. And we talk about anxiety, but their anxiety is when the parents leave them and they don't understand what's going on. Because when you are 3 years old, you are like, what's going on? Where are my parents? Where did they go? Why did they let me here with people I don't really know? Yes, after some months, the people around you, but it is not the same. A stranger stay a stranger if you are forced to be with them. It is not like I come here because I want to be with you. It is concerning children, we choose for them, and they don't choose to be with these other children or with these strangers. So I think about that concerning the anxieties of the children. So that's my point of view. So thank you. I'm not asking questions. I'm not looking for answers because I've got my training for that, and I also talked with my other colleagues. One of my teachers was a psychologist, and she explained us everything about children, their anxiety. But it is very hard to make parents understand that when they left their child at the kindergarten, they need to prepare something, to make a ritual, something to make this child understand that it is just for the day, and it is because mommy needs to work or whatever. And that is the problem we have here in my island, because parents are in a hurry, and they don't take time for that, and they don't understand what's going on. And some of my colleagues, they are just there for the money, not because of the children, not because they love their job. That's my point. And thank you for that. I wanted to share that with people because I want to make people understand the importance of, when you let your child at kindergarten or at school and they are under 6 years old, you need to find a way to make them understand why you need to go. And children are not stupid. They understand everything. They just need to receive a proper explanation according to their age. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a very valid point. And I think that for people who haven't got the psychologist or the training, the thing about it is it's reasoning. And if you can't, you have to be able to reason with the child so that they know they're not being punished. Going to school isn't punishment. Going to kindergarten isn't punishment. It's supposed to be fun, but it's also because you have to go and do something. But here's the good thing, the really good news is that because I do that thing, that means that we get to have food, we get to have days out, we get to do whatever. So it's just about explaining at whatever level you're talking to and at whatever age point you hit that explanation at. But the most important thing is to know that they're loved and that they're not being punished and they're not being left there because they're naughty or they're bad or mummy's not ever coming back again or daddy's not coming back or no one's coming to pick them up. That it is only for so many hours of a day. And I always used to, because Ben being autistic, we used to have a lot of issues with understanding time frames like morning and afternoon. So we used to do the arm, which was the technique that we were shown, which was in the morning, mummy drops you off at the hand. So I drop you off at the hand and then you go to lunchtime. So the elbow is lunchtime and then you have a nice lunch and everything is fun. You have nice something to eat. And then by the time you get to the shoulder, mummy's coming back in to pick you up. And he could look at his arm at any time and know at what point of the day it was, whether it was before lunch, after lunch. Before lunch meant that mummy had dropped him off and he'd not long been there. Lunchtime meant that it would only be a few hours and he'd be being picked up at the shoulder. And that arm technique was the way that I was taught to show an autistic child how to break the day down to make it easier for them to understand. And it was a really good technique to, he didn't, I mean, he could tell the time at the age of 4 years old. He could read a clock. He could, he was extremely intelligent and smart. But he also, at the age of 2.5 and 3, had the horrible fear and anxiety that he was being left. And we took a lot of time to explain that it was just for the period of time between these hours and these hours, and we broke it down. And this arm technique that somebody taught me, which was a psychotherapist actually, and it was fantastic and it worked really, really well. And sometimes Ben would even, like, when he was 5, 6, 7, 8, he would look at his arm and say to me, what am I doing this afternoon? And then he'd touch the top of his arm. It was like that still represented the afternoon to him in a funny kind of way. Nobody else would have noticed it, but I would have picked up on it because I knew how it had been explained to him. So I think everything you said is really important, Alavine, and I think every single parent needs to really understand, and these children are so precious, and we really do have to look after their minds, because if we put bad stuff in, bad stuff comes out. Fears are bad stuff. We need to try and eradicate fears as best we can so they can handle them and become stronger. And then as they become stronger, they're able to understand a bit more. And then they become young adults and they're already being able to reason and understand those fears. And even like I said, Ben starting his first day at the labs, still scary. First day at a new job, it's scary. Coming on here, showing our faces for the first time, nobody wanted to do it. It was scary. We're all still kids. We're just big kids. And that's the truth. Annie, play the song, my lovely, please. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I'll go through and read every comment later on, I promise. Can we have the song, please, Annie?
Can Sheldon, welcome. I see you. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. Lana is talking to Lil Shay in the comments. You got a lot to get through, my friend. I'm glad you're doing well, Alavine. Thanks for coming to share with us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Your video. Yes, here's what I've done with it. It's not my video. It's not your videos. Mike's amazing creation, Mike LeBlanc's creation, right? Whose TV is that? Your TV? Is that my TV?
I'm muted, so it wasn't me.
Okay, it's me. It's my phone. Because Ilana mentioned earlier on, turn the TV off. No, that was about the news, right? Okay. All right, I turned my YouTube down because we can. I'm going to cancel my shows this week, Paulette. So I know what I'm going to do. Here goes. Enjoy Jack on Water, Mike LeBlanc style.
Walter, #1 bestseller worldwide. Stories that inspire, becoming every child's guide. She teaches resilience, skill by skill, slowing worries down until they're still. Approaching issues with a stronger mind, building generations one heart at a time. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present and your future too. So just stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? What would Walter do? What would Walter do? What would Walter do? Not for profit, but for every child's right to handle smaller challenges, to stand and fight. The bigger stuff takes longer, that's okay, but confidence begins with what we do today. Trustworthy souls and integrity shine at Mental Wellness Cafe. She draws the line between drowning in the darkness and finding light. She lifts them up, teaches them to hold on tight. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present and your future too. So just stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? What would Walter do? To clear your mind, give yourself headspace to think before you let the pressure make your spirit sink. Self-belief and talking to someone you trust, these are the tools that lift us from the dust. She champions the dignity of growing strong. Every child capable, they belong all along. Generations rising with the strength she's built. Paulette's legacy, a world without guilt. From Huntington to hearts across the globe, her compassion is the thread that she has woven and sewed. Adults and children, all walks of life, she's extending her hand through every kind of strife. Understanding, patience with the counselor's soul, making broken spirits feel completely whole. With Charlotte beside her, they both believe that every mind can learn, every heart can achieve. When the storm clouds gather and you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, clear your mind, let the answer come to you. Walter's gonna be there in your present, your future too. So stop and ask yourself, what would Walter do? 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 He reminds you of your strength and you can make it through. He'd be in your presence.
Right, you had to end something. I didn't quite perfect it, but you heard most of the song.
Great.
Yeah, you heard most of the song. I just shared the link as well. I spelled water badly, as I do. This is my keyboard's all the way over here on the fireplace, and my screen's over there. Anyway, you know, I cleaned my room.
Well
all
done,
this
you lovely. Considering you've been doing it in your lounge or in the on the fireplace, you've done a great job, and now you've got to go and sort out all kinds of stuff. So you said you're
Yeah.
cancelling the rest of the rooms today.
Yeah, no, for a week. You know, so literally, I'm going to have to concentrate
Take a
on
week off.
getting
Good.
this house, you know,
Get
in a
it
way.
crack on and get it done. Marvelous.
Yes. Otherwise, I'll be here at Christmas. I don't want to be here at Christmas. So you know,
So we haven't got Lisa's room tonight anyway. So
no,
that's
this
next
is
week.
next week. Yeah, next week. So
Perfect. But
yeah,
listen, I mean, I can't offer you to come up and me feed you because it's too far away. So
you can't
get yourself away.
because you can't enjoy the meal either. So don't do
No,
that.
I can't. Not at the minute. It's all I can do to keep water down. So yeah. But listen, don't worry about me. Look, you get yourself a nice takeaway tonight. Get a, what does Ben call it? What are those delivery thing? Deliveroo.
Deliveroo. I'm going to B&Q. I'm going to accept myself there.
Oh well, if you're going to B&Q, you'll get to go to somewhere and get food, won't you?
Yeah,
All right, my love.
probably.
Well, thank you for doing today. Much
Thank
appreciated.
you,
And thank you,
everyone.
Olavine, if you're still here.
Thank you as
Thank
well.
you, and you're
Excellent. Thank you
welcome.
for your input.
Thank you. No, the land lost a song. So Paulette is going to go through the comments and respond to all your amazing comments. So
I will. I promise. I'll go do it.
enjoy,
Take
everyone.
care.
Enjoy your week. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye,
Bye,
Levine.
love.
Bye.
Bye. Lots of love. Bye bye.
Bye, Jenny. Bye, Paulette.